into a brand new episode of Comic Class. In today's discussion video, guys, I want to talk about two comics that are just iconic, and I feel like definitely do deserve to be faced off against each other, which is Crisis on Infinite Earths by DC Comics and the Infinity Gauntlet by Marvel Comics. Now, both of these stories are fantastic. Their impact and their legacy cannot be overstated. And today I just want to go through different areas, I guess, of story and which story I think pulled it off better. Which overall book was a better book. And as always, these are my opinions. Be sure to comment down below which book you prefer if you've read both. If you haven't, I definitely do recommend you go check out these books because they're fantastic sagas / stories / story arcs. Like I said, be sure to comment down below what you enjoy more, and a link in the description down below to check out both these books on Comixology and buy them legally. But without further ado, let's jump right into these categories. And the first thing let's talk about is overall story. The story of Crisis on Infinite Earths basically focuses on the antimatter, using its antimatter cannon to do an antimatter wave to basically destroy the entire universe. So the superheroes basically have to stop him. And the story of the Infinity Gauntlet is that Thanos basically uses the Infinity Gems to basically wipe out half the life of the universe, basically. And now the superheroes basically team up to go to like an asteroid type thing and fight Thanos there and basically stop him and bring back the people that have died. Or, they don't know if they'll be able to do that, but that's basically the goal, to stop Thanos and then I guess figure out what to do afterwards. And the way the story is played out, though, I do think it's really interesting. Now, it's kind of hard to compare completely because I believe Crisis on Infinite Earths is a 12-issue story, and the Infinity Gauntlet, I believe, is 8 issues or 6 issues. So it has a significantly littler amount of story, basically. But as all good stories, length doesn't always matter. It's how you use the pages that you're given, basically. So even though Crisis on Infinite Earths has more pages, if it's dragging itself, it doesn't really matter. And the same thing goes for the Infinity Gauntlet. If it has less, but it's progressing so fast during each issue, then it doesn't matter that it's down by like 4 or 5 issues or 6 issues, something like that. But overall story progression, I think both of them were really good. It's kind of hard to pick a winner for that. But I do think that if we're going by like how deep it is and how much plot threads there are, I have to give it to Infinity Gauntlet because it is very linear. Whereas the whole reason for Crisis on Infinite Earths is to reboot the universe, the DC universe. So there was a lot of information in there. So for someone that is just given that book and doesn't really know the DC universe that well, it's not as simple as just handing someone the Infinity Gauntlet story and then being able to just enjoy it as a single story. So story-wise, I have to give it to the Infinity Gauntlet. Jumping to the next theme, which is action. Action-wise, both of them are really good. Infinity Gauntlet, like I said with the last theme, it is very linear in that it's a single battle basically against Thanos, basically. And the action sequences were drawn so well by George Perez, as well as the dude that did the art after him. I forgot who it was, but he did a really good job too. They both did. As far as Crisis on Infinite Earths, very good action as well. I would say that the action in Crisis on Infinite Earths is a lot more dynamic. So this one I'm going to give it to both of them because it's really just a preference on which one you prefer. If you prefer a more linear story, or, well, not story, but linear action, or like these bombastic team attacks that we got to see during the fight against the Anti-Monitor. It was just really cool, especially when the OG Superman, Golden Age Superman, was fighting with the newer Superman. I think it's Silver Age. Fantastic story. Fantastic action, I guess you could say. And yeah, so action wise, I give it to both of them. Neither one would win that category. Third thing would be the art. A same thing, it would have to be a tie, because George Perez did the art for both, with the exception of the last, I think, 2 issues of the Infinity Gauntlet, but he did the majority of the work in Infinity Gauntlet, and I believe did the beginning of the battle against Thanos, which was like probably the best part of the whole book. But he also did the art for Crisis on Infinite Earths, and that whole book looks amazing. So it's really like both of them are great. I don't even think it's like a preference thing. Anyone that's looking at that objectively would see that George Perez did some amazing work on both books. So that one would be a tie. I guess another category would be the impact both of them have. Now, both of them have really great impact, being that Infinity Gauntlet is still being used in a way for a lot of media, especially during the MCU era. We're still in that era, but the Infinity Saga, I guess you could say, was what they're calling it. Used the Infinity Gauntlet as a basis for their entire MCU, basically as a backdrop. So that's very important, and definitely shows the legacy of Thanos in this story arc. But the same thing is true with Crisis on Infinite Earths, and that we had just gotten, I think it was in 2020, we had gotten the Crisis on Infinite Earths CW adaptation, which was really well praised in how it handled adapting that story, even though it was had a lot of changes. I still used it as a basis in its main premise. And we did get to see the Anti-Monitor and the Monitor, as well as Pariah and stuff like that, Harbinger and stuff. So they both have really good impact. It's not fair to say that, Infinity Gauntlet has more because it had the MCU being movies, and that Crisis on Infinite Earths, is on a show because that was just what they chose. It's not that they couldn't do that in a movie sense, in a film sense, but they just chose to use the show because they already had a universe basically built in their TV show universe. So it just made sense to do it as a TV show event, basically. So both of them are really good, and you really can't say one has more impact than the other, because Crisis on Infinite Earths, flat out created the DC universe the way that we know it today, with the multiverse and stuff. It basically ushered in the idea of a reboot of an entire universe. So that alone, even though it's not movies or whatever and not completely pop culture, literally changed the entire comic book medium. So both impacts are fantastic, and neither one I would say is bigger than the other, because they're just different ways to look at it. One's in a pop culture sense and one's in a comic book history sense, basically. So they're both very important in their impact and their legacy. And I guess the final thing we can talk about is villains. Now, Thanos is a great villain, and I think that Infinity Gauntlet, because you can't really put Thanos' quest because it's not Infinity Gauntlet, so it's hard because Thanos doesn't really have a lot of breakdown of his character, but he's still a really great villain if you were just to read the Infinity Gauntlet story arc. But the same thing can be said about the Anti-Monitor. That he's very interesting as well. He has a very good design. And I will say that as far as menacing goes, as a villain, I do think the Anti-Monitor is a lot more scary. And, he was a very big threat. He caused the Flash to basically have to sacrifice himself to save the universe, which is a very big deal. And, people died during this story. Supergirl died. So I think as a villain, you might have to give it to the Anti-Monitor, because he really did do some stuff that had lasting changes on the DC universe as a whole. I know this will be a little controversial because, people do like Thanos a lot, and they do compare him to Darkseid, rightfully so, being that he was based off Darkseid. But I do think the Anti-Monitor, we have to look at what he did in his story, and he basically took out two heroes in a way. And Barry Allen was gone for a long time. Same thing with Supergirl. So that effect that this story had in killing those heroes really mattered for a lot of decades and stuff like that. So I think villain wise we'd have to give it to the Anti-Monitor. I think that's it though. I don't think there's anything else we can really comment on in a category sense. that we haven't touched upon. We touched on its story, its action, its artwork, its villains and stuff like that, its impact. Overall, they're pretty even stories. I mean, the tally is, I think, 3 ties and 1 win on each, which might seem like a cop out, but they're just both so good. Now, I have heard people say that these stories are overrated. I think a lot of people don't look at the context of when these stories came out. They were very groundbreaking when they came out, and it's just because things got a lot better and we got a lot more consistent in our writing and stuff, doesn't mean these things aren't good, because they really did pave the way for a lot of stuff that came in the future for Marvel and DC. And we should really be thankful that these stories exist, and I'm thankful that George Perez as an artist, as well as other people that contributed as well, everyone did good in these books, but George Perez is just such a standout artist, and I'm so glad that he was able to do both of these events. And I mean, we can't deny the fact that the success of Crisis on Infinite Earths definitely played a part in getting George Perez for the Infinity Gauntlet saga, basically. There's no way that they didn't use him because of that. He did, so he's like the master of drawing like all these characters in these big splash pages and stuff. And like I said, and when we talked about art, it's just fantastic, the artwork for both. And the artwork alone is something that you should just read these books for. If you're not into, like these type of stories, still read it for the artwork because it's fantastic. But that's all, guys. Like I said in the beginning, be sure to comment down below what book you enjoyed more if you've read both. If you haven't, go check it out on Comixology. Both of these books are very short reads. Like I said, Crisis on Infinite Earths is like 12 issues. I believe the Infinity Gauntlet is 6 issues or 8 issues. It's something like that. And both of them are just so fun to read, and you definitely won't regret it after reading these 2 event books. They basically set the standard for what an event book should be, and maybe those standards aren't always lived up to, but they definitely had a good start, and hopefully one day we'll get something as great as these books in our generation. But that's gonna be all, guys. Until next video, God bless you. Until the next lesson, keep on reading those comments.